All right. Hi, folks. I want to do a video on something that I think is extremely important. As far as politics go, this is the most important thing that I personally spoke on and seen happening in politics right now. Okay. The name of this video is going to be Roe vs. Wade being overturned was used as a cover for red flag gun laws being rushed through the Senate, then through the House, and signed into law. Okay. Now, here's the thing. A lot of you people have probably not even heard of this act, okay? It's called the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. And remember how safer communities, remember that'll play in further as I read some of these articles. I'm going to go back to articles that I posted back in like 2018, 2019 that had me concerned even back then. I post about it on Facebook on my old account before they deleted it. And I save all my posts though, so I've got everything that I said in those links saved in my notes on my computer so I could go back and get it. So that's why I'm able to kind of read you guys my notes back then and what I thought of it back then. But here's the important thing. I don't want to lose you. Pay attention. This is extremely important, folks. Okay? They released the verdict of Roe versus Wade, and they've got everybody on everybody's Facebook, everybody's Twitter, everybody's media freaking out. The conservatives are celebrating it. The liberals are losing their minds because they hate it, okay? And all it did was push the responsibility of abortion back to the states, right? Okay, but here's what no one is talking about, and this is my problem. This bill, Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, has been passed, okay? Here's the important thing. Funding for state red flag laws and other crisis intervention programs. Okay, what's a red flag law? A red flag law is written into law basically that if someone reports you as having a mental health issue or not seeming stable, then without you committing any crime at all, the law enforcement agencies can go to a judge, and if the judge agrees that that you seem mentally unstable, they come and take all of your firearms without due process. They take them on the spot, they walk away with them, and then you have to go to court and explain why and convince the court that you are mentally stable enough to own these guns that you've legally purchased by the Second Amendment of the Constitution. It's as unconstitutional as you can be to take somebody's firearms without them committing a crime, folks. That's the problem with red flag gun laws. So let me give you, for instance, real quick. Elon Musk just gave y'all back your free speech on Twitter, right? Now, to me, I think that's all political theater, and I'm going to explain that to you right now, because now, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he buys Twitter from that's approved by a board that have 7 of the most liberal people you've ever met. And those board members could have said, no, we're not going to sell this to Elon Musk. We're going to do some things differently, and we're going to move forward. And the stock owners would have been, okay, these guys are going to do things differently. The stock's going to rebound. We do not have to sell. So for you people that think they had to sell to Elon Musk is nonsense. No, they did not. The board decided, and all 7 of them voted unanimously to sell Twitter to Elon Musk, right? Why would liberals that hate conservatives so badly give up that much power as to hand over Twitter to someone who's obviously supporting conservative thoughts, folks? That makes no sense. That is what I call political theater. It's a game. It's like you're watching scripted reality on TV, folks, okay? So now, here's my point. Elon Musk gives you your freedom of speech back. So now everybody gets on Twitter and starts shooting their mouth off again about QAnon. QAnon's making a comeback. They're talking about how the Democrats are this, that, and the other, and all these conspiracy theories, which might be true, might not be true. I tend to think that it's at least based in some truth, but here's the thing. Get on Twitter and start running your mouth about that, okay? And then your Democrat ex-girlfriend from 3 years ago decides that, okay, you're a conservative lunatic. I'm going to turn you in. She calls the cops, okay? And she says, this person believes in conspiracy theorists. They believe in this, that, and the other, and they're not mentally fit to have a gun, okay? The cops go to the judge, get a warrant to come and take your guns, and come and take your guns because your girlfriend from 3 years ago that was a Democrat says you're unfit, and then you literally have to go to court at a set court date to go get your guns back, of which a court date that could probably schedule 2 or 3 years down the road, in which the whole time you're without a gun when you haven't committed a crime just because somebody says you're not mentally unfit. They bring that into question. They don't prove you're mentally unfit. They just bring your mental health into question so that somebody can take your stuff. And as you can tell, I'm steamed about this. This is absolute nonsense, and I'm going to tell you the problem. By passing red flag gun laws, not only does it violate the Second Amendment, is it takes away your First Amendment right to freedom of speech, because guess what? If you're worried about somebody turning you in, about something you might say, and you will not exercise your freedom of speech for fear that they will use red flag gun laws to come and get your guns because of something you've said. So effectively, they've taken away your First Amendment right and your Second Amendment right with a red flag gun law that's as unconstitutional as it could be, okay? That absolutely blows my mind that Americans are putting up with this garbage, okay? Moving on, all right? Here's a serious problem. I posted about this August 1st, 2019. I held on to the article like I explained to you, okay? FBI document warns conspiracy theories are a new domestic terrorism threat, okay? You know what? Before we get into that article, let me show you the things we're going to be discussing so you can figure out whether you want to stick around or not. Now, all the links to these articles will be in the description for this video, okay? Now, we're going to talk about this article here, and I'm going to show you how that the FBI and the head of the FBI, Christopher Wray, is presenting all of this evidence and has so for the past couple years that patriots are white supremacists. They believe QAnon and we're dangerous terrorists. They call us domestic terrorists, folks, okay? Then we're going to go into how this is an article from August 22, 2019, about how Donald Trump himself was looking into creating a new branch of like mental health called HARPA that his daughter and an ex-NBC chairman was going to run, folks, to where they were going to monitor your social media, your Twitter and your Facebook, and they were going to use AI, artificial intelligence, to flag it when they think you had a mental issue, and this system was going to decide whether you kept your guns or not, because then it would literally flag you, and then a human being would respond to the flag, and a law enforcement human being would respond to the flag and come get your guns, and then once again you've got to go present your case to the judge to get your drugs back. This is almost like Minority Report with Tom Cruise in the movie, where they would predict crimes and then come and they would predict crimes before they happen and then come and arrest the person for the crime before it was actually committed, okay? That's very interesting. I've got some quotes I want to go over that, okay? And here's the problem. This Bipartisan Safer Communities Act literally went through the Senate, went through the House, and Joe Biden signed it all within 24 hours. And guess what? The 24 hours that we spent arguing back and forth on the internet about abortion with crazy leftists. While they're running around rioting and raising all this ruckus out here, and we're watching them, okay, how convenient was for them to snake this red flag gun law through it within 24 hours through the Senate, the House, and Biden signed it while we're all arguing about Roe v. Wade like a bunch of idiots. Now listen, Roe v. Wade's very important, right? The overturning of that, right? Okay, abortion is murder, period. I'm not going to get into that. If you need me, if you can look at a picture of an aborted baby with half its face ripped off, and then sit there and tell me that you still believe abortion is a right, then right off the rip, you're a murdering lunatic. There's nothing left more for me to discuss, because if the picture of a slaughtered baby does not affect your conscience to where you can say, wait a minute, maybe I'm wrong, you want to argue against that, conversation's over. You've got your opinion. I've got my opinion. That's it. Because, if you can't accept that, if you can't look at a murdered baby and admit it's a murdered baby, something's wrong with you. Anyways, I don't want to get lost in that. Now, I'm going to read a brief overview of what I think's going on, folks. And you can decide whether you want to hear me continue as I go back to these articles and cite the quotes and show you what's happening here. Right? Okay? I think most politicians, including Trump, they're globalists, folks. They're either Rothschild globalists like Trump through Jared Kushner and Trump's daughter Ivanka marrying Kushner, and I'll get into that later. She was going to run HARPA for Trump, folks, out of these people's own mouths that were trying to push HARPA through, right? Okay? Now, if they're not Rothschild globalists like Trump and his clique, then they're Rockefeller globalists like Biden, Obama, and the Clintons, okay? And I think all of these globalists agree that we need to be enslaved, folks. We need to be ruled over. There needs to be a ruling class that rules over the people like us. They want to drop our numbers, and we are here to be controlled by them, right? Okay? But they fight over who gets to rule over us. They fight about money, okay? They fight about the policies and who gets to sit in the chair telling everyone else what to do, right? Okay. I think, this is my opinion, 99% of politics in America are mostly scripted reality, folks. Think about like the show The Kardashians, right? They script this stuff and make it into a reality show. They tell you reality, but it's scripted. They decide what's going to happen in the show. They tell people what to say, blah, blah, blah. If you need me to explain to you that the Kardashians is scripted reality, I mean, you might be wasting your time watching this video. All this might go over your head if you're not more intelligent enough to understand a lot of that's just scripted, right? The deep state runs the mainstream media, and they tell the sheeple what to think via that mainstream media, right? Okay. Another thing I really don't think I need to explain that point to you. If you can't figure out Fox News and CNN are basically deep state controlled, and they're using that to brainwash people and tell them what to think. Once again, what I get into here in a little bit might go over your head. Okay? All right. Now, in my opinion, this Roe v. Wade stuff was released this weekend to basically as a cover-up for the red flag gun laws that just got approved again in 24 hours. They did this. They pushed it through the Senate. They pushed it through the House. A bunch of rhinos flipped on the bill and voted with the Democrats. And Biden signed it into law on the 25th or like the 26th on Friday or Saturday, folks. All while we were arguing about Roe v. Wade with liberal lunatics, okay? So now, all the authorities have to do, once again referencing red flag gun laws, all the authorities have to do is get a judge to think that you're a threat. And they can get a warrant and take your firearms without due process, okay? Trump was for red flag gun laws. He said this publicly, and I'll get into that in the article, and he appointed William Barr, his attorney general, to enforce the laws. The attorney general basically sets policy for how they're going to enforce laws. He's like the top cop, right? Okay? William Barr said in his confirmation hearings after Trump appointed him, said in his confirmation hearings he was for red flag gun laws too, right? We'll get more on that later, right? Trump eventually tried to create an organization called HARPA, which I told you about, that basically was going to set the policy for red flag gun laws. The AI system was going to monitor the AI system will monitor your social media and decide whether you're mentally fit enough. And then if it decides that there's an issue with you by how it's programmed, a red flag will hit and a human being will overlook your case and respond and come and get your guns if they think you're no longer mentally fit to own a gun, right? So based on your social media posts, they decide whether you are mentally ill or not and whether you can own a gun or not, right? Okay. Now. Oh, well, I got lost here. Okay. And let me point out again that Trump's daughter Ivanka was one of the leading people for this, that was really pushing for this, folks. And it was rumored that she was going to have she was going to be one of the top organizational heads of this division of the government called HARPA, right? So what does that mean, folks? If you're to get on Twitter or Facebook and share a QAnon post, right? Do you remember when all that was happening and QAnon's making a comeback? Okay. They're going to say, okay, you're mentally unstable, get a warrant, take your firearms, okay? So initially what they've done is they've taken away your First Amendment right and your Second Amendment right with one red flag gun law, because you will not get on Twitter and Facebook and really speak your mind if you think that an AI system is going to flag that and say that you're not mentally stable and have someone take your firearms. So you're in constant fear of losing your firearms, which is a constitutional right by the Second Amendment, and you're no longer using your freedom of speech, which is the First Amendment of the Constitution, because you're afraid that someone's going to take your property. Okay? Now, this article right here. FBI document warns conspiracy theories are a new domestic terrorism threat. They're talking about QAnon, folks. Now, I have copied and pasted in my read-along here some of these quotes that are in this article. This is an article from August 1st, 2019 about what the FBI is doing, folks, okay? The link to all of these web links will be in the description for this video. If you want to go back and read this whole article, you can. The link is in the description of this video. All right. Now let's talk about some of the problems with what they're doing, folks, okay? So the FBI has produced a report in which they say conspiracy theorists are a growing threat in America. They've created a new category to label all of us that are suspicious of their official explanations, okay? Basically, if you believe like 911 was an inside job, folks, trust me, you get flagged, you're a domestic terrorist, or you're on a watch list right now. Now, whether they're going to tell you it's actually they're doing it or not, something else, but I can guarantee you, if you've ever posted about the official story of 9/11 not being accurate, you're on a watch list. I guarantee it, right? Okay. Now, the new category is different in that it focuses not on racial motivations, but on violence based on specific beliefs that, in the words of the FBI document, attempt to explain events or circumstances as a result of group actors working in secret to benefit themselves at the expense of others, and are usually at odds with official or prevailing explanations of events. That's what I was referencing about 9/11. That's one quote in this document, right? Okay. The Democrats are also continue to push the narrative, white people are terrorists, okay? This article states, in a contentious hearing last week before the Senate Judiciary Committee, FBI Director Christopher Wray faced criticism from Democrats who said the Bureau was not focusing enough on white supremacist violence. The term white supremacist, white nationalist, is not included in your statement to the committee when you talk about these threats to America, said Senator Richard Durbin. Okay. There is a reference to racism, which I think probably was meant to include that, but nothing more specific. So basically, Senator Richard Durbin is trying to pin Christopher Wray down. He wants Christopher Wray to drive in and nail it even harder in his testimony to Congress here that white supremacy is his problem, right? Okay. Let me get on to these other quotes here, okay? This is another quote from that article. The FBI for the first time has identified fringe conspiracy theorists as a domestic terrorist threat, according to a previously unpublicized document obtained by Yahoo News. The FBI intelligence bulletin from the Bureau's Phoenix field office, dated May 30th, 2019, describes conspiracy theory-driven domestic extremists as a growing threat and notes that this is the first such report to do so. Again, I'm going to say the first one we know of. Okay. It lists a number of arrests, including some that haven't been publicized, related to violent incidents motivated by fringe beliefs. Okay. Fringe belief, again, if you ever read a QAnon post and thought some of it might be true, then you believe in a fringe belief, right? The FBI assesses these conspiracy theories very likely will emerge, spread, and evolve into the modern information marketplace, occasionally driving both groups and individual extremists to carry out criminal or violent acts, the document states. It also goes on to say the FBI believes conspiracy theory-driven extremists are likely to increase during the 2020 presidential election cycle. Now, do you remember, folks, how the FBI was caught trying to get a bunch of morons to go kidnap Governor Whitmer? Okay. Now they're setting the table here saying we need to be watched, and then going out and looking for idiots that they can try to trick and entrap into doing something stupid, like trying to go kidnap Whitmer, right? Google that, folks. You know what? I should have grabbed that article real quick, but you can easily find it. Google conspiracy theorists try to kidnap Governor Whitmer. It'll come right up, folks. The FBI was behind all of that, according to some of the articles I've read, right? The FBI said another factor driving the intensity of this threat is the uncovering of real conspiracy or cover-ups involving illegal, harmful, or unconstitutional activities by government officials or leading political figures. The FBI does not specify which political leaders or which cover-ups they're referring to. A lot of people who read this believe they were trying to refer back to like Trump's collusion with Russia and all that garbage, right? They wanted working up to try to impeach Trump is what it sounds like to me. Anyways, President Trump is mentioned by name briefly in the latest FBI document, which notes that the origins of QAnon is the conspiratorial belief that Q, allegedly a government official, posts classified information online to reveal a covert effort led by President Trump to dismantle a conspiracy involving deep state actors and global elites allegedly engaged in an international child sex trafficking ring. This is all stuff that's in this FBI report that Christopher Wray gave an account to Congress, folks. The FBI is already under fire for its approach to domestic extremism. In a contentious hearing last week before the Senate Judiciary Committee, FBI Director Christopher Wray faced criticism from Democrats who said the Bureau was not focusing enough on white supremacist violence. The term white supremacist and white nationalist is not included in your statement to the committee when you talk about these threats to America, said Senator Dick Durbin. There is a reference to racism, which I think probably was meant to include, but nothing more specific, okay? Wray responds. Wray told lawmakers the FBI had done away with separate categories for black identity extremists and white supremacists, and said the Bureau was instead now focusing on racially motivated violence, but he added, I will say that a majority of the domestic terrorism cases that we've investigated are motivated by some version of what you might call white supremacist violence. So they are no longer tracking the black identity extremists and saying we're just focusing on the racially motivated stuff. But then he goes in and underhandedly blames it on white supremacist violence, folks, to fit the Democrat liberal agenda. Okay. Now, okay, I'm going to go back to you and I'm going to moving on to this article here. Okay. White House considers new project seeking link between mental health and violent behavior. This is the article explaining the stuff about how, while Trump was in office, they considered creating a division of the government called HARPA that they would use an AI system to track your information online and what you post on social media and decide whether you can have a gun or not, right? Basically, that's what it was, okay? It's going to decide whether you actually get to exercise your Second Amendment right, okay? I'm going to read you the post that I posted, that I found, okay? And I was responding to people that didn't believe me this actually existed, because you've got these people that are brainwashed into thinking that Trump's their savior, and I don't believe that. 95% of what Trump says I agree with wholeheartedly. I wish that I believed Trump was sincere. I do not believe he isn't. I believe he's controlled opposition. Okay. Now I'm going to read you what I posted here, and then I'm going to read the quotes from this article that I think are relevant to what I'm trying to explain to you. And again, the link to this article will be in the description of this video, so you can go back and read it for yourself, right? This is an article from the Washington Post. It was published 3 years ago on August 22, 2019, okay? The post I posted about this and complained about, let me just read the post. Trump, HARPA, and red flag gun confiscation post, okay? So, I was accused, this is me speaking through a post, right? I was accused of making this story up about Trump being in favor of creating a new department within the government named HARPA that will use a social media scoring system to collect info from our social media posts and other media devices like Apple Watch, Google, and Google Home to determine whether or not we are mentally fit to purchase or own firearms. Well, here is the article from the Washington Post that explains this proposed plan that Trump and his daughter Ivanka are allegedly going to be pushing hard for behind the scenes to implement. Folks, red flag gun confiscation is being planned in great detail, and if they can push this type of legislation through, then our First and Second Amendment rights will no longer exist. Well, guess what? They used Biden and got this through, right? They're not using HARPA yet, but they pushed it through, okay? Now, I want to go over the quotes from this article, which I believe stand out, okay? Number one, the White House has been briefed on a proposal to develop a way to identify early signs of changes in people with mental illness that could lead to violent behavior. Okay, remember, folks, how I told you, like Tom Cruise movie Minority Report, where they had the AI system and they were using like the three psychic kids, and like they were tapped into their brains, and they could like predict future crime, folks. Well, this is not the same thing, but it mirrors that in a lot of ways of how they say that this artificial intelligence program can track this stuff. Okay. Supporters see the plan as a way President Trump can move the ball forward on gun control following recent mass shootings, as efforts seem to be flagging to impose harsher restrictions such as background checks on gun purchases. The proposal is part of a larger initiative to establish a new agency called the Health Advanced Research Projects Agency, or HARPA, which would sit inside the Health and Humane Services Department. Its director would be appointed by the president, and a lot of people think Ivanka was going to be the president or second in charge of this, folks. And the agency would have a separate budget, according to 3 people with knowledge of conversations around the plan. HARPA would be modeled on DARPA. Folks, if you don't know what DARPA is, the Defense Agency Program, Google that. They're into some weird stuff. A lot of the chip technology that we fear is coming, chipping human beings so they can be tracked, was basically researched and perfected in DARPA, right? Okay. HARPA would be modeled on DARPA, the highly successful Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency that serves as the research arm of the Pentagon and collaborates with other federal agencies, the private sector, and academia. Okay. The attempt to use volunteer data to identify neurobehavioral signs. Okay, volunteer data is just a fancy way of talking about all the stuff you volunteer, all your opinions you volunteer out to the world when you throw it on social media, folks. So when you share a QAnon post and you say that you agree with it, you're volunteering that information, and they're saying, hey, we're going to use that to develop a profile on you and decide whether or not you actually get your constitutional rights. Because if we think you're mentally unfit, we're taking your stuff, right? Okay. The attempt to use volunteer data to identify neurobehavioral signs of someone heading toward a violent, explosive act would be a 4-year project costing an estimated 40 to 60 million, according to Jeffrey Ling, the lead scientist advisor on HARPA and a founding director of DARPA's Biological Technologies Office. So they've got people that were part of DARPA that are actually, basically driving what policies they're going to use and driving the formation of HARPA. In the immediate aftermath of Dayton and El Paso, talking about 2 shootings, Trump said he might support background checks for all gun purchases and quote-unquote red flag laws to deny guns to those deemed hazardous to themselves or others. Right there, Trump says he's for red flag, okay? But Trump on Tuesday called universal background checks off the table in a conversation with the head of the NRA, though he later denied saying that, okay? Basically, what happened, folks, in my opinion, and I believe it's obvious, they said, hey, you can't go against your voting base, because they know a lot of people that voted for him are members of the NRA, and they're not going to go for a red flag gun law. So he backed off it publicly, but he never stopped trying to work this through, and I can prove that to you. Trump says, we're looking at the whole gun situation. I do want people to remember these words, quote unquote, mental illness. These people are mentally ill. I think we have to start building institutions again because, if you look at the 60s and 70s, so many of these institutions were closed. Okay, he's saying that people that do these stuff or might be suspected of this stuff basically need to be locked up in institutions. So now not only will they come and take your gun over social media posts, folks, this might literally lead to you being institutionalized over something you said on Facebook. You go do your 2-week or 2-month basically brainwash sessions, and then you're allowed to go back home, right? Trump has reacted very positively to the HARPA proposal, according to a person with knowledge of the discussion, and has been sold on the concept. So this person is stating that Trump has been sold on this concept of HARPA. But it's unclear whether the president has reviewed the new safe home component of the proposal and creating an entire agency that would be a huge lift to Congress. There you go, safe home. Now, what did I tell you, folks? They've changed that terminology to safer communities, right? But they were using that type of terminology back here in 2019 when Trump was the president of the United States of America, considering starting this wing of the government, okay? This is again a quote. Every time this has been brought up inside the White House, even up to the presidential level, it's been very well received, a person familiar with discussions said. HARPA is the health care equivalent of DARPA. Let me say that again, folks. HARPA is the health care equivalent of DARPA, and it's a great legacy project for the president, one he is uniquely positioned to get done. Okay. Trump has a close personal relationship with Bob Wright, the founder of the Susan Wright Foundation. And let me stop right there, folks. This HARPA technology, this AI technology, was basically designed under Bob Wright's Susan Wright Foundation, folks. It was originally designed somehow to track cancer patients or something like that. But they've obviously, that was probably just a front to get the money to actually produce this stuff. But anyways, carrying on, Trump is linked to this guy, Bob Wright. Wright is the former chair of NBC and had that chairman job when Trump had his show The Apprentice on NBC, right? Now, another quote from the article. Wright sees Ivanka Trump as the most effective champion of the proposal and has previously briefed her on HARPA himself. So Ivanka Trump is on board. Everybody knows that Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner do not believe in the Second Amendment, folks. If they could come and take your guns right now, they would. They don't believe a common, normal American should be able to own an AR-15, folks. Okay. Trump believes the same way, but he'll never tell you that in public because then you obviously would have issues voting for somebody like that, and he wants to manipulate your vote. Okay. Now again, this is Bob Wright speaking about Ivanka. It would be perfect for her to do it. We need someone with some horsepower, someone like her driving it. It could get done. So he is saying that Ivanka Trump gets on board and drives this. She could get this whole thing done, right? Said one. Oh, I'm sorry, this is not Bob Wright. This is someone with knowledge on the subject. Said one office familiar with conversations. we'd be able to put every resource of federal government from the highest levels of the scientific community to say quote unquote, this is how people with these problems should be treated and have limited access to firearms. Okay, folks, that's profound. Let me read that again. This is a quote by these people that want to take your rights away. This is how people with these problems should be treated and have limited access to firearms. Okay. Now, moving on to another quote. Okay. The idea is for this agency to develop a sensor suite, right? Okay. This is the name for the AI, folks, that they're going to use to track all this. Okay. The document goes on to list, hold on a minute, I got lost. The idea is for the agency to develop a sensor suite using advanced artificial intelligence, AI, to try to identify changes in mental status that could make an individual more prone to violent behavior. The research would ultimately be open to the public. Okay, folks, that's what I was telling you about. The AI system that's going to track your social media posts and decide whether you can own a firearm or not. Harper would develop, quote-unquote, breakthrough technologies with high specificity and sensitivity for early diagnosis of neuropsychiatric violence. Okay, says a copy of the proposal. This is actually a quote from the proposal. A multi-modality solution, along with real-time data analytics, is needed to achieve such an accurate diagnosis. Okay. Real-time data analytics, once again, collecting your information off the internet. The document goes on to list a number of widely used technologies it suggests could be employed to help collect the data, including Apple Watches, spying on you, Fitbits, Amazon Echo, and Google Home. The document also mentions, quote-unquote, powerful tools collected by healthcare provides like fMRIs, tractography, or whatever that is, and image analysis. Now, what they mean by image analysis, God only knows, folks. That might be satellite tracking for all we know. We do know that this is basically going to be, essentially saying it without saying it, a subdivision of DARPA. And DARPA's got all that, right? Okay. They're once again speaking about DARPA. This is another quote from the article. DARPA is a brilliant model that works. They have developed the most transformational capabilities in the world for national security, said Liz Field, the president of the Susan Wright Foundation, saying those techniques had yet to be applied to healthcare. We are not leveraging the tools and technologies available to us to improve and save lives. They're always doing it under the guise of improving and saving your lives. The woman is literally saying, we're going to take DARPA technology and track you, okay? We're not using it now. We need to use it to track every citizen, and they can do it through this HARPA Foundation if it was created, folks. Okay. Now, let's talk about this. Last thing I'm going to cover, okay? This is what I just told you about, what I think, though. That's why they release, well, I don't know if they scheduled this behind the Roe v. Wade announcement of Roe v. Wade getting overturned, or if they wanted to shadow this with it and decided to release it now. But basically, it all means the same thing. They released the information about overturning Roe v. Wade, and during that whole process, they pushed this red flag gun bill through in 24 hours. It goes through the Senate, the House, and Biden's already signed it, folks. I'm going to read this article to you. Again, I will put the link to this article there. It is by this 2A Daily News that, in my opinion, this article goes over all the key points of what everybody needs to understand about what they did this weekend, okay? While the nation was caught up in the fallout from the United States Supreme Court overturning the 73 Roe v. Wade decision, the House Representatives passed the bipartisan Safer Communities Act on around noon on Friday. With the Senate approving the bill late in the afternoon on Thursday, it now goes to President Biden, who expected to sign it into law. They wrote this article before Biden signed it. Biden basically immediately signed it. It's signed, sealed, delivered. It's done. It's signed into law, folks. You can Google that on your own, okay? The House passed the bill 234 to 193. That was the vote score, 234 to 193, with 14 Rhino Republicans crossing party lines to vote with their Democrat colleagues, okay? And it names them all. Shockingly enough, 4 from Ohio, my home state. I'm disgusted, but you know what? Like I said, basically, folks, this left-right paradigm, it's just a bunch of garbage. It's basically controlled opposition. Anyways, I found it also remarkable that Anthony Gonzalez the rep from one of the reps from Ohio. I'm pretty sure, folks, that's the guy that used to play wide receiver at Ohio State that was drafted in the first round by the Indianapolis Colts for football fans. The ball-headed white kid. He's in politics now. I'm pretty sure that's him. Okay. The House approval of the bill came the day after the Senate voted to pass the bill by a 65-33 vote. So like I said, within 24 hours, all this happened. All of us who have met with survivors, I shouldn't even read this quote. Nancy Pelosi makes me sick, but I'm going to read you what the woman said. All of us who have met the survivors in the wake of the tragedies have heard their message loud and clear. We must do something. Today, in their honor, we heed their powerful cry, sending a major gun violence prevention legislation to President Biden's desk for signature. Speaker of the House Pelosi spoke on the House floor, according to The Hill. Okay. Notable in his opposition to the bill was Rep. Thomas Massie from Kentucky, Republican. I like a lot of the stuff Thomas Massie says, but again, folks, probably controlled opposition. I'm not sure, but I like what he said, okay? He referred to the bill as ineffective, unconstitutional, ill-conceived without consideration for the dangerous unintended consequences. Now, what does he mean by dangerous unintended consequences? He's talking about how obscurely they wrote that law to where they can get a red flag gun law warrant and come and take your stuff based on no proof. All they have to do is suspect you're mentally unfit to have a firearm, and then we're going to come and take your stuff, folks. They are going to go out of their way to abuse that privilege. It's the same thing as when they wrote into law that these tech companies could basically decide what they allow you to say on their platforms, right? It's the same thing. They're going to abuse the garbage out of this, folks. Okay? McConnell did not elaborate on how the country is no less free since the legislation would allow for a gun to be confiscated from its owner via court order with no due process, a point hammered home by Ted Cruz on the Senate floor Saturday. So, Ted Cruz, George Bush's cousin, again, probably controlled opposition, but at least he's speaking like he's got some sense. Cruz said this: those so-called red flag gun laws have been implemented in multiple states, and they enable the state to take away the right to keep and bear arms from law-abiding citizens. They render you vulnerable, Cruz said, according to The Hill. McConnell seemed to suggest to reporters before the floor vote that his support was in small part due to political calculations. This is McConnell. It's no secret that we lost ground in suburban areas. As reported by The Hill, we pretty much own rule in small-town America. Speaking of the Republican Party, we pretty much own rule in small-town America. And I think this is a sensible solution to the problem before us, which is school safety and mental health. I hope it will be viewed favorably by voters in the suburbs. We need to regain in order to hopefully be in the majority next year. Folks, this is just political garbage. He's a moron. You know, I mean, I'm just going to move on. There's no sense in even commenting on how stupid he is. Okay. Our take. This is 2A Daily News take on this. We don't harbor any illusions that most of our readers and supporters are Republican voters. We share their anger and frustration with the GOP, supposedly the party of Second Amendment rights, stabbing us in the back. The main question is the postmortem of this bill is why did they do it? Our short answer is that they did it because they could. Republican leadership is banking on the gun owner base having a short memory of what happened. 4 years from now, when senators such as Joni Ernst of Iowa go before the voters, they will represent to you their case that you must vote for them out of fear of what could happen if the radical left seizes control of Congress. The same radical leftists that rhino Republicans were more than happy to either work with or support on this atrocious bill. And despite all of our bickering over rhinos in the GOP, somehow they keep getting sent back to D.C. and state capitals all over the country. There must be an end to the game of my legislator is great, it's everyone else's that's the problem. There must not only be no compromise on Second Amendment issues, but there also must be no exceptions. Republican legislators must always toe the line on gun issues, whether they have been in office for 30 days or 30 years. If they fail to do so, they must face the animated contest in their next primary. We think that gun owners will provide GOP leadership. We think that gun owners will prove GOP leadership wrong, and they're bet that gun owners will forget this. If gun owners forget, there will be more compromises, and those compromises are exactly how we got here. One more thing, we've made no secret of our affinity for the American Firearms Association, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to get into that. Anyways, folks, here's the point. Once again, I mean, the people that were voted in here, these Republicans, if I'm not mistaken, more than half of them had an A rating by the NRA. So the NRA rated these guys as like an A or an A plus, saying that Republicans should vote for them. And 14 of these people go and vote against our Second Amendment rights, basically putting making red flag laws legal. Okay, folks, I don't know what else I can say, or what else is another example of how, whether you're a liberal or a conservative, the political game they play with Democrats and Republicans, folks, it's a stage show. Okay, it is scripted reality. 99% of it is scripted reality, and this is another example for me that's proof of that. Okay. Again, if you want to read these articles, I'll make sure to put the link to these articles in the description for this video, folks. And until next time, God bless you all in Jesus' name. And I'm praying that we can all wake up and hold these people accountable. And by not voting for these morons, folks, I'm telling you that when you put even if 15% of that support is gone, that shakes them up, because that's enough percent for their enemies to go and get elected into office. It doesn't have to be everybody. If just 15% of the conservative vote would wake up and just literally just stand there and, folks, I won't even vote for these people. If I don't agree with you 100% and I can't vote for you knowing with 100% in my conscience that you're doing the right thing, I won't vote for you. I did not vote for Donald Trump, folks, and I got on Facebook and took a lot of garbage from a lot of Christians and stuff that told me, well, if I don't vote for Trump, it's like a vote for Hillary. Yeah, well, guess what? You got Mr. Operation Warp Speed here, who's now running around, literally said on Candace Owens' show that the people that don't get the vaccine are the ones going to the hospitals, and we all know, folks, that's a flat lie. Donald Trump lied to us all on Candace Owens' show, okay? And he continues to say that everybody should get vaccinated. No surprise, Mr. Operation Warp Speed himself wants you to get vaccinated. Well, he made the government push 300 million vaccines in, push the manufacturing of them. 300 million people in America, 300 million vaccines. Do the math, folks. Everybody gets one. Okay? Anyways, folks, until next time, God bless y'all in Jesus' name.